Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Congresswoman Norma Torres' Tax and Economic Impact Payment webinar today. We are joined today with tax experts and stakeholders from across our community to discuss the delivery of stimulus checks and the impact of coronavirus on federal and state taxes. If you have additional questions during the webinar, if you see on the right-hand side, you'll see a chat box. Go ahead and submit your questions there, and we'll try to get through as many as possible. And with that, I will introduce Congresswoman Norma Torres to give a Washington update.
Thank you, Jacob, and thanks to every one of you for joining us today. Today we will discuss how the COVID-19 pandemic has changed our lives, and in particular, how taxes will impact us. The biggest development is that tax day was moved from April 15th to July 15th. But of course, if you're expecting a refund, you should file as soon as possible to get that money in your pocket as soon as possible. I want to take a moment to thank the tax experts who are on this webinar today. Annabelle Marquez from the IRS is here to discuss the stimulus checks and federal tax deadlines with us. Susan Meyer is with us from the California Alliance for Retired Americans to discuss the economic impact payments for seniors. And Lila Fedler is here from the California Finance Tax Board to talk about state tax filings and adjustments to collection. Before we get into the tax details, I want to give you an update on how Congress is trying to help you get through the COVID-19 pandemic. Our first priority when the economic impact hit us was to get money directly into your pockets, and as soon as we could make that happen. That's why we gave you an economic impact payment to make sure that families have the cash flow that they need, even if the economy is on hold. That's up to $1,200 for our workers and an additional $500 per child. There's an important deadline for anyone on this webinar who receives supplemental security income or VA benefits. If you have children under the age of 17, then you need to enter their information at the irs.gov by tomorrow. That's tomorrow, Tuesday, May 5th, to receive the $500 payment at the same time as your individual $1,200 payment. If you miss that deadline tomorrow, your payment at this time will be $1,200, and the $500 for each qualifying child will take a bit longer. I know that $1,200 certainly isn't enough to pay for all your bills if you lost your job or had your hours reduced, even temporarily. That's why Congress expanded unemployment benefits. And for the first time ever, we made independent contractors and gig workers eligible for unemployment benefits. This last piece was a huge priority for me because so many of the workers in the Inland Empire are independent contractors, either working in warehouses, the service industry, or part of the gig economy. But the direct result of what we did is that Californians are eligible for a total of 39 weeks of unemployment insurance instead of 26. While on unemployment, those same workers now receive an additional $600 per week until July 31st. So the average American receives their regular paycheck while on unemployment, and the independent contractors are also eligible to apply, not just traditional workers. Finally, as a parent and grandparent who understands what it's like to juggle a job and care for a sick child, I was very proud that Congress expanded paid sick leave for COVID-19 for the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the federal government requires small and mid-sized businesses to provide up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave for workers if they have to quarantine due to a suspected or confirmed case of COVID-19. Workers who need to care for a family member with COVID-19 or need to care for a child whose school is closed or their child care facility is closed due to the coronavirus can take advantage of new federal paid leave coverage. Just talk to your employer to see if you qualify for those benefits. So far through these and other efforts, I've already announced more than $75 million in aid for our community. And with that said, I know that we are not out of the woods yet. More people are losing their jobs while the COVID-19 is still a threat. And I will keep fighting for support for our community. We will get through this together, even if it means that we have to socially distance in the process. So with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to our first presenter today. Jacob, I think that you will announce them.
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman. Our first speaker today is Annabelle Marquez. She is the Congressional District Liaison for the IRS. Annabelle, you're on the line.
Thank you, Jacob, and I want to thank Congresswoman Norma Torres for this opportunity to join this virtual event and offer IRS information. My name is Annabelle Marquez. I'm the IRS Congressional Liaison for California. My job, among other things, is to help get answers to your general IRS and federal tax-related questions. I'll start by sharing that we're still about a couple months out from the tax filing deadline, as Congresswoman Torres mentioned earlier. The IRS extended this year's tax day to July 15th. That means that people who file their tax returns electronically, and if you're owed a refund and you opt for direct deposit, you should still count on having your return processed and the refund issued within the normal time frame. The IRS also implemented something called the People First Initiative, which basically suspends many collection activities through July 15th to offer taxpayers some relief during these difficult times. Now, the IRS is working as quickly as possible to make sure people continue getting their economic impact payments, also known as stimulus payments. It was already a very busy time for the agency given the operations of the regular tax filing season when suddenly the COVID-19 pandemic arrived and the IRS was handed the task of issuing economic impact payments as part of the CARES Act legislation. So far, 130 million economic impact payments have been issued. I understand there are still people waiting to get their economic impact payments. And by the way, these will be available throughout 2020. But the IRS and the Treasury Department have executed, really an extraordinary task by delivering millions of these stimulus payments to Americans within 1 month. And in an effort to speed payments to taxpayers, the IRS released 2 online tools. One of them allows non-filers to enter basic information so that they receive their payment more quickly. The other tool allows taxpayers to enter their bank information and check the status of their payment if, for example, they didn't have their bank account information noted on their return. This tool would allow them to do that so they can get that payment faster. Economic impact payments are being distributed automatically with no action required for most people, and this includes Social Security recipients. Next slide, please. In order to qualify for an economic impact payment, people must have a valid Social Security number. If you're single, you must have an adjusted gross income of no more than $75,000. People with a married filing joint status, or people who are married and even with a married filing separate status who earned up to $150,000 are eligible. And if you file as head of household, you must have earned up to $112,500 to be eligible for the full amount. Folks who receive Social Security benefits or supplemental security income, they are also eligible, and the same applies to adults who receive non-taxable income. Next slide, please. The payment amounts are as follows: $1,200 for single individuals. Married couples receive $1,200 per person for a total of $2,400 per couple. In addition to these amounts, there's an economic impact payment of $500 for each qualifying child. And for people with incomes above the amounts I just mentioned, the payment amount gets reduced, and it's completely phased out if you're single and made more than $99,000, or if you're married filing jointly and made more than $198,000. Next slide, please. So how does the IRS know where to send your payment? As I mentioned earlier, economic impact payments are being distributed automatically with no action required for most people. The economic impact payment amount a person receives is based on the information they provided on their 2019 taxes. For those who have not yet filed their 2019 returns, because as I mentioned earlier, we've extended that deadline, your 2018 return is being used to calculate the payment. Payments are then sent to the bank account or address you indicated on your return. Now, the IRS is working with other agencies to retrieve your information. If, for example, you receive Social Security benefits or SSDI benefits and you don't generally file a return. Again, there's nothing you have to do. Your economic impact payment will be issued through the same method you receive those benefits. Next slide, please. People who have not filed tax returns in a long time or ever, because they are not required to do so, possibly earn too little, or again, as I mentioned earlier, earn non-taxable income, those folks can file a simple information return online on irs.gov. It's a link, it's a feature titled Non-Filers Enter Your Payment Information Here. By clicking on that, you'll be asked to submit your full name, your current mailing address, email, date of birth, Social Security number, and your bank account number. If you haven't yet received your payment, next slide, please. We ask for your patience. It will likely arrive, and soon. And as I mentioned earlier, there are still many more economic impact payments that have yet to be issued. 130 million have been issued so far, with many more to go. And we have a very helpful and thorough list of frequently asked questions on our website, irs.gov/coronavirus. We are updating our website frequently with more information, so I encourage everyone to visit irs.gov for the latest. As many of you know, our operations centers are very limited right now, considering we've closed most offices, given the social distancing and the safety precautions for our IRS employees. So you may have better luck getting information on the website than calling the IRS 800 number at this time. And on a final note, I just want to remind everyone that the IRS will not call you to request personal or financial information over the phone or by email, nor will the agency call you about economic impact payments. Remember, those will be automatically issued. Once your payment is sent off, you'll get a letter in the mail within 2 weeks confirming that, in fact, your economic impact payment was deposited or a check was mailed. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Great, thank you so much, Annabelle. We'll get to questions during the Q&A section, but next up to discuss sort of economic impact payments and how seniors are receiving those, we have Susan Meyer, the Southern California organizer for the California Alliance for Retired Americans. Susan, you have the floor.
Hello, everybody. And first, we want to thank Congresswoman Norma Torres. Norma is an endless fighter for seniors' rights and always looking out after our seniors. We have over 1 million members here in California. And we do thank Congresswoman Norma Torres for spending a lot of her time on making sure that our seniors are receiving what they need to get them through this time. Thank you so much for your endless fight for our interests. So the May is Older Americans Month. So here we are celebrating our older Americans, but our older Americans are at greatest risk now during this period. And they are at greatest risk for their health and their economic security now more than they have been in decades. So as there are many pressures on our governors, the CDC, Health Department, to return to normalcy, for our seniors, we need to stay sheltered in place. We need to follow those recommendations. So we know that over half of the ICU admissions for COVID-19 and 80% of the deaths are people aged 65 and over. So these facts prove seniors must shelter in place to save their lives. So the average Social Security check for seniors is approximately $1,600 a month. And many seniors rely on their Social Security money to keep them out of poverty and homelessness. So the economic impact payment, commonly known as a stimulus check, is necessary to help our seniors stay out of poverty. Seniors now, because they're staying at home, require more services that they'll need to pay for. They need to have their groceries, pharmaceuticals, other items delivered to their homes, and they need to pay for these services. They also, drug prices, and as hard as Congresswoman Torres has fought, and especially under the passage of H.R. 3 to lower these drug prices, the drug prices continue to go up, and this has a very heavy impact on our seniors. Also, many of our seniors, to augment their Social Security, they need to take on part-time jobs, and they're not able to do those part-time jobs now. Also, many drive for Uber and Lyft and other transportation, and really it's not safe for our seniors to do this, so they are staying at home. Therefore, this stimulus check is very important to them. The reports that we are receiving is that our members are beginning to receive their stimulus checks. They're receiving them both by mail or to their banking institutions, and it depends on how they receive their Social Security checks. We believe that our seniors should be receiving these checks by the end of May. And so I think, the stimulus check to seniors is just what it says, to help stimulate our economy. And when we give the stimulus checks to seniors, seniors will be pushing this money out to the communities where they live. And so that stimulus money is going to very quickly go back into our economy. And this is why this is so important and very beneficial for seniors to get this. Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. Next up, we have Lila Fedler. She is from the Taxpayer Rights Advocates Office with the California Franchise Tax Board. Lila, you have the floor.
Okay, do you want to advance the slides? Okay, so what we're going to be covering is we're going to talk some information about what's the state doing with regards to COVID-19, the income tax filing deadlines, and some extensions that we've been doing to prevent aggressive collection type action. We'll also talk about the California's earned income tax credit. This is a refundable credit, like the federal earned income tax credit. It's available to you. Additionally, the California legislature has also expanded, and this year for 2019, we have what's called the new young child tax credit. So those individuals that actually qualify for California's expanded earned income tax credit that have an eligible child under the age of 6 can get even more money, up to $1,000 for the young child tax credit.
We lost your audio.
And at the end, we'll cover just a few resources because a lot of people are struggling with just trying this. You can go to our website in the state of California. It's the agency's name, FTB, Franchise Tax Board. .ca for California, .gov for government. At the very top of the screen, what you're going to see is the COVID-19 information. And if you click on the read more information, if we go to the next slide, what you're going to see is the we're going to take you to a page where you can get frequently asked questions with regard to the COVID-19, or if you're just interested in knowing about whether your tax returns or your payments are on extension, we've also have a link to that. And the quick answer for that is all taxpayers, if your due date fell between March 15th and July 15th, all the due dates have been pushed to July 15th. So you don't have to worry about, do I need to file an extension? Do I have to get that tax return prepared? That's all been pushed to July 15th, as Congresswoman Torres said earlier. So it's okay. Don't need to worry about that. A lot of people, though, have been asking about, well, what about billing? What are you doing for billings? We've put a soft hold on all of our collection action. We're not sending out bills, so you should not be getting any earnings withholding orders, bank attachments. None of that is happening right now. That's all been put on hold, recognizing that we are in a state of emergency. The state is not aggressively going out and trying to collect the money. Other questions that have come in deals with, well, is this income or this stimulus check, is it going to be taxable? What about that extra $600 in unemployment? That's non-taxable, and that all is available to you in our frequently asked questions. A lot of questions have been coming in for people that are in business, and they've been trying to apply for those paycheck protection loans, and maybe they've got behind on their taxes for that business entity, and they've gotten their entity suspended. When you click on the frequently asked questions for our COVID-19, we have a link there to a service that allows you to request the steps to get that entity put back into good standing so you can proceed with those loans. And if we go to the next slide. What I really want to get into is California's earned income tax credit, this new young child tax credit, and I'll touch a little bit about the federal earned income tax credit. These are 3 cashback credits that are out there to help working families that are low income get some money in their pockets to do whatever you need to do. If you need to pay your rent, go out and buy food. If you apply for this, you qualify for it, you're going to get a refund. It's for you to go out and spend. It is designed to curb poverty, so those people that are making a more income, they're not going to qualify for it, but those with the lower end income will qualify. They can get more money in their pocket. All you've got to do is file a state income tax return, qualify for it, you'll get your refunds from California. For the federal earned income tax credit, you've got to file a federal tax return. And by the way, if you missed the deadline for last year, the 18, it's not too late. These are available to be claimed as long as the statute of limitations for filing your claims are open. And if you qualify, you can ask for these credits, even credits that go back for a couple of years. It's available to you. Okay, next slide. So the earned income tax credit, like I said, it's a refundable credit. It is based upon wages and self-employment income. It is designed for the lower income. If you have qualifying children, it actually helps to establish the credit. So you don't have to have qualifying children, but if you have children, it'll give you a higher refundable credit. The ceiling income level for California was raised this last year for 2019. The maximum income you could have in 19 is $30,000 to qualify for the California's earned income tax credit. But if you qualify for this credit between the state and the federal, you can get between $240 up to a maximum of $6,557 just for asking for it and showing that you qualify. On the young child tax credit, it could get you an additional $1,000. You do have to have a qualifying child under the age of 6. Now, the biggest problem that it's out there is that at the federal level, to get the earned income tax credit, you do have to have a Social Security card. So anybody that has an I-10 that is not able to get a Social Security card that allows you to work, you will not qualify for this. The California's Young Tax Credit is only available if you qualify for the California's Earned Income Tax Credit. Let's go to the next slide. So as I was saying, it is based upon what you earned in 2019 for California. We do have a credit as long as your income was $30,000 or less. No, it doesn't matter how many dependents you have. That is the qualifying amount of income. Back in 2018, the income level was significantly less. It was $25,000, and you had to have some dependents to get, in some cases, qualified. With no dependents, you had to have less than $17,000 in income. Let's go to the next slide. One of the things that California did do was we expanded the California's Earned Income Tax Credit. In 2018, California allows those individuals that are at least 18 years of age to qualify. For federal, I believe you actually have to be 25 to get the Earned Income Tax Credit. More importantly, because we've got a lot of senior citizens, I believe, on this line, California doesn't limit you once you turn 65. The federal Earned Income Tax Credit ceases after age 65. California does not put an age limit. So you've got a senior out there, they've been doing a little side jobs, as long as they've earned some earnings during the year, and it's below the qualifying income level, they can apply for California's Earned Income Tax Credit. Again, you have to have had a job. You can have worked for yourself or worked for an employer. Either one works, but you do have to have a valid Social Security number. And for California, you do have to have lived in the state of California for at least half the year. Let's go to the next slide. So the new Young Child Tax Credit, again, that went into effect in 19. You do the same requirements, less than $30,000 in income. The qualifying child does have to be under the age of 6, and you do have to ask for the California's Earned Income Tax Credit to get the Young Child Tax Credit. But it can get you an additional $1,000 of money in your pocket. All you've got to do is file that return. As your income rises, the amount of the credit will phase out, just like the Earned Income Tax Credit. But we do estimate that there is over 400,000 families out there that will be eligible for this new Young Child Tax Credit. And we hope that everybody that qualifies takes advantage of that. Let's take the next slide. So, how much can you get? Well, family with income of at least $14,551 between the federal and the state Earned Income Tax Credit, you can get up to $8,053 by just filing that return, asking for it, and showing that you qualified. Let's go to the next slide. So a lot of people are saying, well, we're confined. How do we get our tax returns filed? How can we do that? Well, at the State Franchise Tax Board, if you go to our website, again, that's ftb.ca.gov, right above the picture of San Francisco, the first thing you'll see is the word file. When you clicked on that, let's go to the next slide. One of the things that you're going to get to is CalFile. California has provided a free service for those individuals, especially those that are wage earners. If you're self-employed, you're not going to be able to do the CalFile, but if you're just a wage earner, you can use our CalFile and not only file your 19 tax returns, but we allow you to file your 18 and your 17 returns. So if you qualified for this credit and you didn't claim it for 17 or 18, it's not too late. You can use our CalFile. It's a free service. It's an easy question and answer type service. And so that's available to you on our website. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, this is credits that puts money in your pocket. Go ahead and check out the California's Earned Income Tax Credit, the Young Child Tax Credit, and while you're at it, let's look for that federal Earned Income Tax Credit. That way we can get as much money into our economy and get back to business. And finally, the last one is where can you get resources? Go ahead to the next slide. There is some free services out there. There is what is called the Voluntary Income Tax Assistance Program, often referred to as VITA. Now, I've heard that those sites are pretty much closed. Some of them are taking phone service where if they're open, you can work with them over the phone to get your tax returns prepared for the federal. That information is available for you by going to EITCforme.org, and there you can find VITA sites information for helping with getting your federal tax returns prepared. And I look forward to assisting and answering any questions.
Great, thank you so much for that presentation, Lila. Now we're going to move forward with the Q&A portion of the program. Like I said earlier, if anyone has a question, please submit that in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We have gotten a lot of questions, so we'll try to get through as many as possible in the time we have. First up, I want to go back to sort of seniors and stimulus checks. This, first off, can be a question for Annabelle, if you're still on the line. When should Social Security and SSI beneficiaries expect to receive their checks, and where will they receive them? I know there have been a lot of questions about that.
Sure thing. Thank you. I think this is a great opportunity to explain how economic impact payments are sort of being distributed to Social Security recipients. We have a group of Social Security beneficiaries, benefit recipients who also file taxes. Those folks would have had a profile, so to speak, on the IRS system. So if they filed taxes in 2018 or 2019, then Social Security recipients that filed taxes and were possibly owed a refund already had their bank account information on the return, and their economic impact payment would have made it to their account sooner than folks who also filed returns but didn't have their bank account information. So what the IRS did was we asked that these folks use the Get My Payment tool if they had filed returns. That way we can get their bank account information and then issue those economic impact payments to their bank account. If that wasn't done by the time that the agency reaches their account, this again is for Social Security beneficiaries who filed taxes, then a paper check will be generated. Now, on the other hand, we have Social Security benefit recipients who don't file taxes, who basically live off of their Social Security benefits. Those folks should start getting their checks, as the other speaker mentioned earlier, this month. And we did say that paper checks will begin to be mailed out the first week of May, which is the week that we're currently in. So we expect Social Security benefit recipients who don't file taxes and to be getting those payments this month. I hope that helps clarify things a little bit.
Great, thank you, Annabelle. As a follow-up to that question, we did get a question from another senior. If you're on SSI, you have income limits on what you can earn. Do these income limits apply to receiving the stimulus check?
Absolutely not. They would not affect other benefits, nor are these economic impact payments taxable. So the only way that an economic impact payment would be in any way affected, so to speak, or an economic impact payment would be offset if there was a past due child support delinquency. But other than that, the economic impact payments should have no effect on other benefits a person's receiving for purposes of income limits, or nor should folks worry about having to later pay taxes on these payments. That's already established in the CARES Act legislation.
Great, thank you. And that was actually the other question that some of our seniors had is, will this stimulus check be a tax liability for seniors, either at the federal or state level? And maybe that's something that will.
Yes, thank you. It will not. And as a matter of fact, the CARES Act legislation, based on the statutory language in the legislation, we do understand that these economic impact payments will be a refundable credit when folks file taxes next year. So if for some reason, somebody didn't receive their economic impact payment, which again, these will be available throughout 2020. These payments will be reconciled in your taxes next year.
And as I said earlier, for California purposes, it's non-taxable. California doesn't tax Social Security, and we will not be taxing the CARES Act payments, nor will we have any taxation of the additional unemployment benefit. We don't currently tax unemployment, and the additional $600 per week would not be taxable for California.
Thank you, Lila and Annabelle. Susan, do you have anything to add to that? Are you seeing anything with our seniors that may be confusing for them? Okay, great. Okay, moving on then. I know there's been a lot of confusion around dependents and taxpayers and how the stimulus check applies to them. We did have one question. This may be for Annabelle as well. My 20-year-old child filed a tax return and paid taxes for her part-time job during 2019. I still claim her as a dependent. Why didn't she receive a $1,200 check? She filed and paid taxes in 2018 and 2019. Can you go into a little bit more about the dependent scenario?
Sure. Yes, thank you. In order for a person to be eligible for the economic impact payment, they generally are not supposed to be a dependent on someone else's return. Now, for this particular taxpayer, if their dependent is older than 17, then that would not make them eligible for the additional $500 economic impact payment. However, if this person who is 20 years old files their own tax return for 2020, which is the current year in which we are now in, if she files her own tax return in 2020, then when she files her taxes next year, she may be able to claim that refundable credit, which is the economic impact payment next year. So let me see if I can sort of repeat this again to make it a little more clear. Her mother claims her as a dependent. Therefore, even though she's a worker and had earned income, she didn't get the $1,200 economic impact payment. But if she files again, when she files her taxes for 2020 next year, she'll be able to claim that as long as no one else can claim her as a dependent.
That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. So moving forward more on the dependent side. So a constituent asked, what happens if I had a child in 2019? Will I receive a stimulus check for that child? And are there any other tax credits maybe on the state side that child would be eligible for if they just recently had the child? So both for the state and the federal?
I'll start by saying that yes, qualifying children under 17 years old would put their parents eligible for the $500 economic impact payment. We have run into several situations where the child is a newborn and perhaps a Social Security number hasn't yet been processed. And so in those cases, the official guidance is to just remind folks that once they file their 2020 returns next year, they'll be able to claim that economic impact payment that they were eligible for but did not receive during the distribution of the payments in 2020.
And I'm not clear if they're saying that the child is newborn in 2020 or were they newborn in 19? Because if the child,
sorry, go ahead.
If the child's newborn in 2020, the California will, as long as the parent qualifies for the California's earned income tax credit, that child will help to qualify them for a larger California earned income tax credit on their 2020 tax return. And since the child's under the age of 6, as long as they get them a Social Security card, they could potentially get a California young child tax credit for California. Again, at the moment, I can only tell you what the 19 rules are, and that's having income of less than $30,000. That I believe is indexed So next year, I don't know what the dollar amount is going to be for 2020 for California's earned income tax credit, but it should be a consumer price index. So it may go up. Unfortunately, with the downturn in the economy, that may actually have a negative effect on the amount of income that'll qualify. So I would definitely say stay tuned, look for your 2020 tax return, look to see whether you qualify for the earned income tax credit and the young child tax credit for California purposes.
Annabelle, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think what I was referring to in terms of, getting the economic impact payment is that if a child was born in 2019, let's say, for example, the parents hadn't yet filed their 2019 taxes, and they pulled their and the IRS used their 2018 return information to calculate the economic impact payment. Well, that child wouldn't have been indicated on that return since the child was born a year later. So in those situations, and again, this is in reference to the economic impact payment and not to other child tax credits that are available, but in reference to the economic impact payment, for folks who didn't receive the additional $500 economic impact payment for qualifying children, either because they were born in 2019 and they haven't yet filed their 2019 returns to, claim a dependent, or if the child was born in 2020, those economic impact payments should be able to be claimed as a refundable credit next year when folks file taxes.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Okay, moving along here, we've gotten a number of questions about sort of availability of tax support during this time. Is the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board continuing to process tax returns? And is there sort of any talk about when we'll have sort of public lines for IRS customer support again, or taxpayer support? I know that people are curious as to what kind of support is out there for them during this time.
Sure. Well, I can start by answering that. Again, this is Annabelle Marquez with the IRS. 70,000 IRS employees are, currently figuring out what's next for us. Many of our employees work at our processing centers, which means that if you filed a paper return and you mailed it, and here in California, you would have mailed that to the Fresno Processing Center, your tax return has not yet been processed because our centers are closed, and even though a limited number of employees have started to return to work, these paper filed returns are going to be experiencing some delays. Our telephone operation centers were also closed for the most part, and so we are slowly trying to make sure that we offer the necessary resources for taxpayers. Our website, irs.gov, is an excellent resource for many of the frequently asked questions. The Taxpayer Advocate Service, which is an independent agency that's also under the Department of the Treasury, they generally help constituents with account-related tax questions. My office handles more of the general inquiries. The Taxpayer Advocate Service right now is also extremely busy, and they haven't yet begun to accept account-related economic impact payment inquiries. But I will be immediately informing Congresswoman Torres' office when we're able to help gather more information on individual economic impact payment questions for taxpayers. But as you can imagine, our operations are very limited at this time, and we're doing all that we can with what we do have available.
So this is Lila with the State of California Franchise Tax Board. We are currently processing tax returns. We do have staff available. We have kind of limited some of our staff, so we don't have quite as many people answering the phones, but the phone lines are available, and that assistance is available. We are processing returns. We actually have a service on our website, again, ftb.ca.gov. If you go all the way to the bottom of the page, on the home page, you're going to see on the far left, the last thing will say help. And we've got a link called wait times. When you click on the wait times, it's going to tell you how long you can expect it to take us to process your tax returns. Right now, if an individual is electronically submitting their returns, it's taking about 2 weeks for us to process the returns. Paper returns are taking about 3 months, but that's generally what it takes when it comes to paper. It really hasn't been that much of an impact. We did have a slight slowdown when this first came on. A lot of social distancing measures went into place, but we are pretty much coming back up to full speed. When it comes to calling our phone lines, you can click on the contact link on the Know Our Wait Times, and we actually display what the current wait times on the phones is. And surprisingly, it says our 800 number only has a 15-minute wait. That's unusual, I will tell you that for a fact. Normally, 3-hour wait, but we're a state of 40 million people, and if everybody's trying to call at the same time, it's really difficult to get through. What we also offer, but a lot of people don't know about, is that we offer a Myftb. So you can register on our website to get access to your tax information. You create your ID, you create your password, you have to tell us, a line item from a previously filed return. Then we're going to send a PIN through the mail. Only takes 5 to 7 business days to get you that PIN. Finish your registration. Once you've got that, you've got 24/7 access to your tax records. You can see, have we received your return? Where is it in the process? Do we have your payments? More importantly, if you need to communicate with us during normal business hours, we've got something called secure chat. You can instant message with the department. It does allow us to handle a lot more inquiries than a phone call. A person on the phone can only talk to one person at a time, but this instant messaging and the young kids today, they can get 3 or 4 chats going at the same time. So it does help to expand that. If it's off hours, you can do what's called send a message. If you've got information you need to send to us, you just upload it. It absolutely bypasses the mail, expedites the process, and everybody out there could register for their own tax Myftb. Anytime you need to look and see what's going on with your account, you can log right into it. We offer it to your tax professional. So with your permission, your tax professionals can add your account to their client list so they can work with you and communicate with us directly. So that information is all available on our website.
Great, thank you so much, Lila and Annabelle. I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions. We'll have one last one for our tax experts here. I know we've received a lot of questions when it comes to mixed status families and the stimulus checks. Do citizens with spouses who have individual taxpayer ID numbers, otherwise known as ITINs, qualify to receive the stimulus check? And in other words, do mixed status families qualify for any kind of that stimulus money?
Hi, yes, this is Annabelle, and I will answer that question. The IRS is an administrative agency, and we basically implement the laws that are in place, tax laws, and in this case, the CARES Act legislation. The statutory language in the CARES Act legislation establishes that if a couple who files married filing jointly, both persons on that return must have a valid Social Security number in order to qualify for an economic impact payment. With that, I will also mention that if one person is able to obtain a valid Social Security number this year that previously has filed on a married filing jointly return with an ITIN, then again, when they file taxes next year, they may be able to reconcile the economic impact payment for which they weren't eligible this year. Again, folks that file married filing joint returns, both persons must have a valid Social Security number based on the language in the CARES Act legislation in order to qualify for an economic impact payment. But if one person, the person with the ITIN number, is able to obtain a Social Security number this year, then the idea is that when they file next year, they'd be able to claim an economic impact payment then.
Thank you for clarifying that for us. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question here for the Congresswoman. A constituent asks, if the coronavirus pandemic extends beyond what we expect, will we expect another stimulus payment?
Congress is currently, we're reviewing another stimulus package that will be introduced either later this week or early next week. In that, we are trying to address some of the issues that were, pending from the last package. For example, if you have a dependent child or young adult that is still dependent on you but is in college currently, ensuring that you are able to claim that person as a dependent and get some, the $500 payment for that dependent young adult still in your household. We're looking at, we understand that $1,200 one-time payment isn't enough. The rent is due every first of the month. Therefore, we are looking to expand that. But again, it's going to take a vote of not just Congress, but also a vote of the US Senate. And ultimately, it requires a signature from the president. So these negotiations will continue to happen. And I'm committed to, the only thing that I can tell you is that I am committed to ensuring that we continue to provide the assistance that is necessary for all of you. There has been some pushback as to how much unemployment benefits combined with the $1,200 and what that means to some families, that some workers may be able to bring home a little bit more than they would by collecting unemployment benefits than payroll from their employer. And I would just, what I would say to that is we shouldn't focus on the fact that maybe some folks might be able to afford to buy cheese for their hamburger this week. Let's not forget that many of the people are so poor, earning, minimum wage, and have to work 2 or 3 jobs. So if their base pay in one job is so little that they qualify for these other unemployment benefits, we should not be holding them, to a higher standard. They're simply, their hours have been cut off, and we should be looking at ways to help prevent homelessness and help lower the number of people that are currently standing in long food lines at food banks trying to get, the basic needs for their families. So I'm committed to continuing to help our hardworking families, live through this pandemic. And I hope that all of you will continue to stay healthy and continue to join us as we continue to provide more of these opportunities for you to engage with experts in certain fields and engage with my office. And I think with that, I will use that as my closing too. Jacob, if you can provide our phone numbers, there it is. Our office number is 909-481-6474, and also our website, torres.house.gov. If you visit our website, please sign up for our daily newsletter that we put out Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends if an important issue comes up that we need to share that information over to you. But every single day, my office is working hard collecting data from the 2 counties that we represent, with the state and federal organizations, to try to ensure that every person that lives in our district is able to have the most up-to-date information that we can possibly give you. I want to once again thank Susan, Layla, and let's see, IRS also for being with us today. You've been very, very informative, and thank you for answering all of our questions directly.
Great, thank you so much, Congresswoman. And with that, we encourage you to contact our office if you have any additional questions. And thank you to all of our speakers, and have a great night.
Thanks, Annabelle.